Thank you, Jessica. My Jewish mother would be very proud. Okay, so my slides are not up yet. Until today, only superpowers have landed on the moon. United States, Soviet Union, and recently China. And we think it's time for a change. It's time to change that. We started SpaceIL, 3 young engineers, Yariv, Kfir, and myself, about 5 or 6 years ago, with a dream to go to the moon and compete in the Google Lunar X Prize. Let's see if this works. Next slide, please. Can you? Oh, there you go. Okay. The Google Lunar X Prize is a competition, international competition for landing an unmanned spacecraft on the moon. And we were the very last team to register to that competition back in 2010. But today, we are one of the leading teams competing in that competition. And I want to tell you about the story of SpaceIL and a few things I learned along the way. Or not, let's see. Okay. The first prize for the winning team of the Google Lunar X Prize is $20 million. We're a not-profit, so we intend to donate that whole sum to promoting scientific education and scientific exploration for kids to go and pursue careers in science, engineering, and math, because we believe that kids today don't want to be scientists or engineers anymore. They want to be celebrities, they want to be rock stars. And Israel, as a startup nation, needs a little bit of those engineers to move forward and take the country forward. And for that reason, we're going to invest that $20 million to that, the prize money to that purpose. Thank you. I want to share with you a little bit about how the spacecraft looks like and how it's built, a little bit of how to build a spacecraft 101. So this is a model of our spacecraft. It's about 2 meters wide, about 1.5 meters high. And it's mostly made out of fuel. So we need to have a lot of fuel to do the enormous distance of about 250,000 miles to the moon. And we need to take a lot of fuel for that reason. It's solar powered, so we're using a lot of electricity from the sun to power it up. One of the things that you don't see in that presentation is the computers or the electronics. And the reason for that is because it's very, very small. When they landed on the moon, NASA landed on the moon some time ago, their computer power was less than what I'm holding in my hand. So this is more powerful than what NASA had at the time they landed on the moon. They used that to land on the moon. We use this to play Candy Crush or check our email. So they did a really remarkable thing back then. In order to get to the moon, there are 3 simple steps. Step number 1 is you need to get it out of Earth's atmosphere, and I'll talk about that in a moment. Step number 2 is you need to travel this 250,000 miles to the moon, and you need to aim yourself, because if you might miss it or you might hit it. And we have a lot of sensors and simulations that are designed to do exactly that, and basically to measure and understand what our orbit is so we can travel all the way to the moon and capture with it. But the most difficult part of the mission is actually the landing itself. We approach the moon at a velocity of about 2 kilometers per second. That's faster than a bullet. And we have to stop to 0. Not kind of 0, not more or less 0. We need to stop to absolutely 0. And the reason for that is we don't want to crash. Now, faster than a bullet, we're traveling faster than a bullet towards the moon. We cannot use airbags or parachutes because there's no atmosphere, and it's just too fast. So the only way it has to work is we need to make sure that we fire our engine exactly in the right moment and exactly in the right position to make sure that we stop at altitude of 0 and velocity of 0. And this is even so more complicated because it takes radio signals about 2 seconds back and forth from the moon. I know, it's difficult. It takes about 2 seconds for radio signals back and forth from the moon, so we don't have joystick here on Earth to say, oh, we see some rocks, let's turn to the right, because by the time the signal goes back and forth, the spacecraft has traveled too long and it might crash. So we have to give all the wisdom that we have of all the engineers that are working on this today to the spacecraft to make sure that it works for the very first time on the moon. There's nothing like landing on the moon here on Earth, so it has to work for the first time. we recently announced a very important milestone, and that is the procurement of a launch contract. So this is basically a ticket to get us to space, and we were actually the first team to do that. And here you can see that we did the announcement at the House of the President. We actually were the first team to procure a launch that would get us to space at the end of next year, actually, 2017, which put us in a leading position in the competition. So for me, that was very exciting to see that we gone from a couple of guys sitting in a pub. You can see my partners there, Yariv Fear, and also Danny Grossman, which is here in the crown. We went from a few guys sitting in a bar thinking about maybe we can go to the moon, to a company that is led by, to an organization that is led by Dr. Eran Privman, that actually has a ticket and a shot on the moon next year, and we're actually the first one to do that. Something that I learned along the way of this journey is that getting a no is really part of the process. And I think this is really important because this was a very hard lesson for me, and I think this is part of the inspiration, what inspired me to do that. So a lot of times we're trying to attempt new things, and people say, no, it won't work. You're wasting your time. You're too young, inexperienced. How many of you have heard this once? Yeah, quite a few. What I understood was that getting a no is actually part of the process. It's not meaning that you need to stop. It means that you need to understand why these people said no and turn that no into a yes. When we started, this is the picture from December 31st, 2010. That was the very last date of the registration to the competition. And this is us signing the documents that we sent to Google to register for the competition. A lot of people then said, guys, it wouldn't work, you're wasting your time. But we had to make sure we understand why they said no and turn that no into a yes. Sometimes you get no not from people, but from physics. On your left-hand side was the first design of our spacecraft. This was a very small spacecraft, cost about, I think, $8 million, and it was about this size. And we thought, this design is very cool, we can launch it, we can do all those things, it would not take much time. And as we ran the calculations and the simulations, we came to the conclusion, we need more fuel. So that was really heartbreaking because we've been working on this for a while and said, okay, so let's redesign it, we can do this. And we came up with the right-hand design that you see there, a little bit bigger, it's not this size, it's about this size, but we can make it, we can make it work. So we actually went ahead and did the calculations and ran for this design for a couple of years until the inevitable happened. We need more fuel. So that was really heartbreaking because we were invested in this for a very long time, but you had to do your homework, and we recently released this design, and we're very proud. There you go. Yeah, we released this design, and I'm positive that this design, with some modification, is the one that we're going to see on the moon very, very soon. So if we have stopped in any of the previous designs, we would not be reaching to a position where we actually have a shot on the moon. And for that reason, I tell you, what I learned is you sometimes get a no. It doesn't mean that this shouldn't be done. It means that you need to do your homework better. And this is a critical aspect of that mission. I want to finish by talking about the educational part of SpaceIL. Kids today lack a little bit of inspiration of doing science and engineering. I mentioned about their desires to be in Dancing with the Stars and MasterChef and all those shows, which is important, but we also want them to be part of something that is engineering. And we want them to follow on SpaceIL and to see those things as they happen, because we live in an instant society where kids today think, okay, we're building the spacecraft, and the next episode, next week, we're going to land it on the moon. And truthfully, it never works that way. It always takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to make something like this work, and they get to follow it with us in the journey of the moon. They get to participate, and there are some programs that they can follow and participate and learn about the spacecraft itself, and they get excited about it. And this is an important part of the mission, and hopefully one day there will be a kid that said, I wasn't that interested in science, but I saw the SpaceIL stuff and got me interested, and today I found cure for cancer. So if that kid would be here, speaking in like 50 years from now, I'll be very, very proud of what we were able to do. Thank you.